Hi everyone, I'm Kevin Delaney. I'm the editor-in-chief and CEO of a small business called Charter. We're a media and research company focused on the future of work. If you want to know more, we're at charterworks.com. And we're focused on flexible working, inclusion, and AI and work. I think some of the topics, we'll hit at least some of them in the course of the discussion today. Thank you for coming for this discussion, Urban Comeback, Cities, Small Business, and the Future of Downtowns. The context for our discussion about a vision for cities and small business is obviously a lot of the changes that are brought about by the pandemic to where we work and where we live. But I think it's fair to say that this is evolving, and we are not at a static state to where our cities are and where we work and where we live, particularly given the economic context and the introduction of artificial intelligence into our workplaces. So we're going to tackle questions including what should the future of our downtowns look like, how can we steer there, and how can we support small businesses as a foundation for thriving urban centers. We have two eminent speakers here for the discussion, and I'd like to welcome, we're going to start with Mayor Muriel Bowser. She's the third-term mayor of Washington, D.C. Welcome. Mayor Bowser has made reviving downtown a core part of her third-term agenda, with goals including attracting more residents and expanding housing. And she recently launched a downtown action plan aimed at boosting the economy. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then Administrator Isabella Guzman. She's the administrator of the U.S. Small Business Administration. She serves as the voice of America's 33 million small businesses and innovative startups in President Joe Biden's cabinet. Under her, the SBA played a critical role in delivering hundreds of billions of dollars in relief to help millions of small businesses survive the pandemic. Welcome to you as well, Administrator Guzman.
Thank you.
So we're going to discuss here for about 30 minutes or so and then open it up for questions from the floor. So you'll have an opportunity to enter the discussion as well. Mayor Bowser, I'll start with you maybe. Could you kick us off by sharing a high-level view of the challenges and opportunities for American cities at this moment as you see them?
Well, thank you for that question, and it's lovely to be here, and I am very proud to be the mayor of your nation's capital. And just to give you a couple of factoids about us, we are 700,000 people. We have an economy that is diverse, and we're proud of it. We'll talk a little bit about the role of the federal government in our economy. We take care of ourselves, but we don't have two senators because we're not a state. So part of the work that we do, in addition to bringing back our downtown, is really advocating for Washingtonians to have the full rights of every other American. So in terms of cities, you won't be surprised that I'm a big proponent of America's cities and what we all need to do as a nation to make sure they thrive. And the part of what we'll talk about today is how the changing landscape of work is affecting American cities. We went into the pandemic with a growing, thriving, hot economy, and it really got turned upside down overnight. And part of what we're seeing and what we saw during the pandemic with all of our workers going home, schools shutting down, small businesses closing or adapting, is a real change to that economy. We're also a tourist-based economy, so visitation is important to our bottom line as well. We are proud of the rebound that we're seeing, however. We see our visitation, especially our domestic visitation, coming back. In fact, many of our hotels have had their best season since the pandemic, and we're pleased about that. Our metro system had its highest ridership day 2 weeks ago since the pandemic, also showing signs of a rebound. I have one of my businesses who owns a number of businesses in DC, and this may sound strange coming from a mayor, but he was calling to complain about licensing. But what I heard was he's opening a new restaurant. And so even with this much uncertainty, there are entrepreneurs all across our city that see the opportunity. So that's a long way to answer your question, to say that cities are adapting to a new reality, a new normal, a new post-pandemic way of living and working and operating. But even in that change, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for small businesses, larger businesses who are ready to think differently about entering America's cities.
And you've touched on this a little bit, but can you sort of summarize the role of small business and how, in your vision, for where Washington, D.C.
Well, small businesses are huge for us, as I suspect in other major American cities. They are the largest employers outside of the federal government of D.C. residents. So we know what small businesses are more likely to hire D.C. residents. And those residents, of course, pay taxes. They send their kids to our schools, and they populate our other commercial corridors. So it's really a huge part of our ecosystem, and they are very tailored to our needs. We have a big movement in DC, a Made in DC movement, which our government supports, but we have a lot of local entrepreneurs, be it t-shirts or whiskey, that are being made in DC and promoted not only to DC residents, but to our hospitality entrepreneurs as well.
DC whiskey is a new one for me.
Oh, well, we'll have to tell you about it.
Administrator Guzman, I want to bring you in. Can you talk about the challenges and opportunities for small businesses in cities specifically right now?
Yeah, and a little bit about SBA as well. I mean, we're one of the, what I like to say is we help deliver the American dream of business ownership to Americans across the country. We fill gaps. We try to de-risk the marketplace so that entrepreneurs can start and grow their businesses by providing them capital, but importantly, revenue growth opportunities as well through government contracting, through international trade, through digital e-commerce strategies, and through wraparound knowledge network services so that small businesses can improve their efficiencies and strengthen their bottom line. And truly, we see an incredible small business boom right now. So in terms of opportunities, we've seen 11.7 million new business applications since the president took office, and that is, over 80% higher, 84% higher than any historical average that's similar for as long as it's been tracked. And that type of birthing of new businesses is really exciting for the prospects in the future. And keeping in mind that entrepreneurs, there's 33 million small businesses across the country. A fifth of those are immigrant communities, from immigrant communities. The other, but the startup rates, those 11.7 million, they're nearly all women and people of color who are starting businesses right now. And small businesses create 2/3 of net new jobs and employ half the workforce, and are 99.7% of all businesses. So it's a huge deal. The SBA puts out about $44 billion a year in capital to help them grow. And as we're looking at the opportunities for our portfolio to be strong and for these businesses to grow, there's opportunities for contracts with this historic spend in infrastructure that's happening around the country. Over 200 billion, I think it's 267 billion so far has been announced and launched. And so contracts are being deployed. Small businesses are hiring up to be able to deploy. And then making in America, reinvesting in supply chains has an enormous benefit to our small businesses as they reinvent themselves to be part of the future of advanced manufacturing, the future of clean energy. It's an exciting time for small businesses who are also dominate the manufacturing space as well, to really position themselves for future growth. But then just across the board, Main Street, we've seen small businesses suffer so dramatically during the pandemic and shutter. But they've shown their true resilience. They're giants in the economy, and their resilience is why they've adapted and pivoted and adopted new technologies. And so there's excitement for what this small business boom will bring to our country.
And how would you summarize the challenges that you're hearing? Part of it is recovering from the scars of the depths of the pandemic and so forth.
Well, I mean, that recovery is huge. You know, the $1.2 trillion that SBA deployed in 2 years for the pandemic relief was really critical for saving venues in cities that are draws for tourism, for saving restaurants, et cetera. But they're still facing workforce challenges as, you know, whether it's people deciding to quit and start their business or, you know, just the increasing challenges of shifting workforce. Supply chain issues, while a lot of the supply chain disruption has been addressed, people are holding inventories in different ways. They're having to manage and be really sharp about their bottom line, their balance sheet, knowing their financials in a new way that they've never had to before. And you know what I often hear as well, you know, across the board from small businesses, you know, the workforce supply chain, but you know, also just any uncertainty, and especially when it comes to the credit markets, because capital is king. You can't leverage opportunity if you don't get capital for growth. And so the tightening credit market and that uncertainty is obviously challenging businesses.
And we'll come back to the credit market in a minute, and also commercial real estate and some of the pressures around there, particularly in urban centers. So part of the context for the challenges of cities and small businesses in cities are changes to how we work and how we live. And so maybe we briefly touch on what you see the impact of that. First of all, there's changes to where people live. And Stanford's Nick Bloom talks about the donut effect, where people who lived in cities during the early moments of the pandemic kind of donutted out to the suburban areas around and have largely stayed there. So one of the, Mayor Bowser, maybe I start with you. Do you have any belief that the donut will become the munchkin or whatever it was prior to the...
Well, I'm proud to say that our people are almost all back, or they're on their way back. They will be back.
Okay.
We saw, I think, about 20,000 out migration during the pandemic, which wasn't a huge surprise. The first wave, and this, I think, our most recent data shows we're up about 3,000 out of a city of 700,000. But the key figure that I looked at to see that we're going to be all the way back is our school population. Looking at our whole region, we're about 4 million in the metropolitan Washington region. We're 700,000 of that. We were the first public school jurisdiction to see our school enrollment crest pre-pandemic levels. So that's when I knew we were back. And the way to do it, though, was that we can't rest on our laurels. The same thing that allowed us to grow for the last 15 years is what will get our residents back. Making sure that we have great public school options like we do, free pre-K 3 and 4, that will get young families. Making sure that we have great affordable housing options is a way that will get young families, and we continue to have the highest per capita investment in affordable housing production. And we want to diversify that too. So when we talk about the downtown, one of our big drivers of our comeback strategy is taking our downtown, which is about 90% commercial now, office spaces, government buildings, and adding more residential housing, at least 15,000. Some people think that that's a soft goal, and it may be, because I think in 5 years we may be able to crush that goal.
And we'll come back to that in a second, but that's converting commercial space to 15,000 residential units in DC.
Yes.
Maybe we stay with you for a minute just on the changes to the working patterns. And you know, what we've seen is that knowledge workers went remote, and still some significant percentage of working days remains remote, which has an impact obviously on businesses and urban centers that don't have the same foot traffic for their businesses and ridership of their mass transit and so forth. Do you have any expectation that we'll return closer to the normal occupancy of businesses, of offices prior to the pandemic? And you have a particular wrinkle in your situation, which is that the federal government accounts for something like a third of your leases space in Washington as well.
So I don't think that we will ever be exactly the way that we were before February 2020, but I don't think we'll be exactly the way that we are now either. I think that employers and workers, both in the private and in local and federal government spaces are trying to figure out the best ways to support their employees and serve their missions. Now, in addition to part of my job of being the mayor, is I'm the manager of 37,000 people. We provide local services. 40% of my employees never did a day of telework because they're frontline workers. They're police officers, firefighters, ticket writers. They work at the local jail. They work in hospital settings. They have been providing frontline services every single day. But for the remaining 60%, we were very aggressive about our return to the office plan, but also recognize the environment that we're in. So we went from a government who had very little teleworking arrangements to one where many of office workers could work up to 2 days remotely. So that has accounted for a difference, but I also know that we haven't landed on what will be a permanent strategy for DC. I suspect the federal government will be in that position too, not to put the administrator on the spot because, you know, that's a centralized, we hope, decision that will be made for our federal workers. For me as a mayor, but also as a taxpayer, an American taxpayer, we want to make sure that our federal workforce is delivering for the American people. And we want to make sure that we're building a federal workforce where they're going to be great managers, they're going to continue to be able to hire great employees. But we also have to recognize the government's role in being a leader for national employers. And kind of setting the stage. The decisions the federal government makes in Washington, D.C. not only affects its workforce, but the contracting workforce and the recruiting environment for all private employers. So they're big, big decisions.
Yeah, and Administrator Guzman, not to put you on the spot to speak for the entire administration, but you have your own. Can you share how you're approaching that?
Yeah, and SBA has been unique because we had to scale so dramatically.
Yeah.
You know, 60,000 loans to 4 million direct loans and another 11.6 PPP powered through the lending institutions. So, you know, they've been performing at a high scale, but it's, you know, we're a very tiny agency. We're about just over 8,000 employees, about 870 in the DC area, but we've been a mission-focused remote positioning. So, in other words, if you're on my disaster team, you know, and you have to staff business recovery centers, you're there, you're in person. If you're in the field and events have started to come roaring back over the past, you know, year, they're in person in the community, serving communities. So it's really an evolving situation for us, and more of our departments are shifting. But again, we follow the lead of the Office of Management and Budget, and as a smaller agency, of course, in trying to compete for workforce, we of course, you know, follow that lead. But I do think that there's tremendous opportunities to, you know, rethink the future of work, and those are the challenging situations that we find ourselves in, is trying to assess, you know, where does productivity remain at its highest, and how do we cultivate, you know, the need to have that balance of remote status, but productivity as well.
I want to shift back to a topic you raised earlier, which is credit. And so there's tightening credit, particularly because some of the smaller banks have actually been under pressure. How are you ensuring, and what do you see the landscape for the credit that small businesses in cities need to access?
Yeah. Well, we guarantee our lending portfolio, and so you know, obviously it's a great product for lending institutions to try to leverage right now. It doesn't sit on their books in the same way from a regulatory perspective. So we believe that the SBA guarantee product will be really critical. The president and the vice president have both really leaned into access to capital, knowing that capital is king, and we've reformed all of our capital programs recently in May, announcing extensive regulatory reform to take the lessons from PPP and how did we scale. And it was about simplifying a product, cutting a lot of the red tape to attract more lenders, 5x the number of lending partners into the program to reach the smallest of the small and underserved communities. And it was about you know, making sure that we could leverage technology as well to you know, automate some of the eligibility and other issues that bring denials to that guarantee. So we want to make things certain for our banks, and we want to make it simpler for the end users. And knowing the statistics, 2/3 of businesses are not able to get the amount of credit that they wanted, either all or none, and huge disparities between African American, Hispanic, Asian, and white business owners. And so, where they're less likely to be able to get funding, and yet they're the ones starting businesses. So in the effort to try to solve for that, we've also looked to expand our distribution network, and I've opened up my programs to license to non-depository institutions, leaning into our CDFIs, our Community Development Financial Institutions, so that they can have permanence in our program. CDFIs are 3 times more likely in our SBA lending to lend to African Americans, as an example. So they over-index to underserved. So we want to power them, and we want to power non-depository institutions to be able to deploy guaranteed loans, and open up that credit box as well by deferring to best practices of lenders that are on the ground working with borrowers to know when that certainty of repayment is more stable. So we're also doing it on the investment side, and so we're about to publish rules that will change the way we operate our small business investment companies that deploy $4 billion of federal capital and matching in the private sector. We're going to incentivize more venture capital so we can focus on critical industries so our country can compete, whether it's national security or healthcare, you name it. We need to be able to fund these early startups to be able to commercialize over time, that long runway. And as well, get those check writers to look like the businesses that we want them to serve. And so expanding our rubric for how we license small business investment companies. So I'm really excited about the changes. And the next few months, we'll see a lot of adoption and hopefully more capital to our businesses during this tight credit environment.
Mayor Bowser, in a minute, we're going to shift to how small business fits into your economic agenda. But just wanted to briefly touch on commercial real estate and what needs to happen there. There's a lot of weakness in some cities, New York, San Francisco. Commercial real estate holders are actually walking away from buildings because of the debt and the interest rate conditions. Do you have any thoughts from your contact with the business community? What needs to happen there to help, at the very least, not impede the sort of things that we're talking about?
Well, I think they're very nervous right now. Let me put it this way. And let me also put it in the context of they've had 15 years of amazing growth. Yeah. So this period of instability is making people nervous. These are human beings we're talking about, and they're talking to their brethren and sistren around the country. So this is a time where people are very nervous, even though, and I always like to remind them, remember the last 15 years when everything was peaches and cream? And so now we really they need to, I think, and part of my job right now is just kind of managing this period of anxiety. And part of the way that we do that is demonstrate that the government is going to be there and be a partner at every step of the way. And part of our partnership right now is creating abatement programs that are going to incentivize these building conversions, which are hard. They're hard in the best of times, and they're especially hard right now. So I recently got passed through my budget process, our housing and downtown abatement program. The second part is to be realistic about the policy environment. If it's tough in your town to build things, then we have to make it less tough. And that's part of what we were also able to accomplish with this budget, to look at some of the requirements that we put on construction that in a tough environment, we really have to lessen, and we are going to advance that process. The government is even doing things that we didn't used to do. Part of our downtown strategy, we call it change the space, like the commercial to housing, fill the space, really be promoters of bringing tenants in, whether they're brick and mortar retailers or other types of companies. Just in this last year, we've welcomed several businesses that have been on the outskirts of DC, like the Boston Consulting Group that opened their downtown office. Brown Advisory just opened their downtown office. A big law firm, Crowell and Mooring, are going to go into a downtown office space. So demonstrating that we can help facilitate facilitate how our property owners can fill their spaces is also good. And the last kind of component of that strategy is what are we doing to bring more people? I see one of our business owners here is Sheila Johnson, and we want to be supportive. For example, if she's bringing festivals in Middleburg, what is going to be their DC component? If her sports teams are winning championships, how can we attract more people to support those sporting events and festivals? So the government is kind of become a promoter to really help close the space. I mentioned a big part of our bottom line revenue is people coming to DC. Our recreational visitors are up. Our international visitors, we're still growing as visas and other things ease up around the globe. But our business traveler, who really is coming to call on the administrator, or calling to call on the congressman, or calling to call on somebody else in the federal apparatus, they also need to come back. And so those are the ways that we're doing, working with our property owners in commercial real estate. So I think right now, we saw for the first time in 15 years a small dip in our commercial property revenues, largely driven by the downtown. And the way that I have to communicate that across the city is you may not live downtown, you may not even have the kind of posture to think that the taxpayer should help downtown developers, which is people think that.
Yeah.
But if we walk away from our downtowns, then we can't have all of the gold standard and social programs that we have, like paid family leave, like historic investments in school and homeless services. We're proud of those services, but they would be at risk if we saw our downtown values decrease at a rapid rate.
And just to add on that from a small business perspective too, I mean, the strong downtown, vibrant communities is what attracts businesses from all industries. They want their workforce, oftentimes, especially in the science and technology space, to have vibrant life balance. And so they want the theaters, they want the great sports venues, they want all that. So cities investing in developing that really helps yield more the attraction of small businesses as well, and innovative startups. Which we've tried to lean into. But the other thing I was going to say is that I do think, the city, we've tried to, at the SBA, partner more and more with city, local governments and state governments, because just like the federal government, we're the ones that need to invest in our small businesses on Main Street. We may not be able to get the investment community motivated to invest in Main Street they don't necessarily have the big returns unless they're growth oriented, but cities and states and federal government gets the payout with tax revenue. So we really need to cultivate our small businesses.
And I know you travel around a lot, and you might be one of the most traveled cabinet members, if not the most. So from your travels, what are you seeing as the ingredients for successful conditions for small businesses in cities? Is there any at this moment in history and kind of looking
Mayor
forward?
is hitting all the right points, because it's housing. They need housing for their workforce. They need good workforce, so they need that talent. As well, obviously, they need the strong services, a simple way of doing business, but more importantly, it's the revenues. And so it's the attraction of customers along the main streets and some really important anchor services and communities.
Have you been, just turning to the small businesses themselves, have you encountered any types of small businesses that have particularly impressed with you with how they're pivoting, how they're diversifying, how they're, you could argue that they're some of the best managers of the last few years because they've had to navigate the extremes of our economy?
Well, I'm really hopeful in the amount of investment they've made in digital technology to advance their businesses. And I know you work on AI, and that'll be a whole nother area that they can advance. But 3 out of 4 businesses said the tools that they adopted during the pandemic was what saved them as well, alongside this critical relief.
3 out of 4 businesses.
3 out of 4 businesses, according to Google research. And 85% of them adopted new technology tools. And so whether that was leaning into social media to stay in contact with their customers, or getting on a platform to be able to sell their products outside of their storefront, I think that's a tremendous opportunity, because it's still a massive marketplace. It's almost 800 billion here, e-commerce in the United States, and then another 5.2 trillion if you look globally. And that's where we want our small businesses to continue to thrive and grow. So it's really those little corner shops that all of a sudden had this digital shift, and they were selling their products to, oftentimes they become these mini multinationals, and that's what's been really exciting, because they've opened up their marketplace and their revenue growth.
One of the realities is that a lot of the emergency COVID-related funding is over, basically. And so are there any particular policy or partnership developments that you think are critical to avoid dropping small businesses who've been used to that support?
Yeah, well, and in particular, ARPA dollars are still being deployed in some places, and a lot of times it's been grants for small businesses or technical assistance. I think, though, that the investment that we've made to help businesses navigate resources and learn the know-how of how to run a business has been tremendous. There's been investments from Department of Commerce, Department of Treasury, the SBA. We've increased our ecosystem and the support, and once that falls off, you have these incredible providers and communities who have connected with these entrepreneurs, and oftentimes in language, culturally competent, leaning into the underserved communities, and that funding will dry up. So to be able to continue to fortify those partnerships in a way, and whether that's from private philanthropy or private sources, we need to continue to give them a stronger fighting chance to succeed, because those who leverage the free advice, the mentorship, we spend a lot of time talking about that as well, they're the ones who have better success outcomes.
Yeah. I'm going to open it up for questions in just a minute. I want to ask, what would you both, and Mayor Bowser, maybe you can start, because I think you have some DC residents in here, from what I can tell. And let's see, the DC residents in the room, how many?
Oh, wow. That's
actually, good. Your constituency has showed up for you here today, it looks like.
They always do. Thank you.
So what, in terms of policies or individual actions, it's a question for both of you, but you could start. Would you want people here to support, to contribute to what we're talking about, this urban comeback powered by small business?
Well, I think that's a great question. And just to add on to what the administrator said, I think it's a net positive, all of the emergency funding that went out to businesses. They were bridge funds that allowed them to get to now, which have been critically important, but they've also been connected to us in ways that they hadn't been before. I think they trust the government more to help, and they trust us to come for more opportunity. And there is more opportunity. I was surprised by the amount of interest, for example, in infrastructure funding, and the amount of new federal dollars and opportunity that are becoming available for a more sustainable world. All of these things we see our businesses becoming more aware of and more able to go after opportunities. So I think that that's important. So what would I say to folks, what they can do individually, and certainly advocate for? It's just, I think that the federal government is going to have to be there for cities. Their commitment can't be over now. I think you kind of touched on one big thing that we won't be able to solve on our own, and that's the transit fiscal cliffs. Cliffs that are coming. Fewer workers riding transit means fewer transit revenues, means and dried up federal transit relief dollars means a lot of really premier transit agencies are facing a tough time. We are unique because we don't have a state to go to. I think they're going to solve their problem in New York, in New York City, and San Francisco by going to the state. And the federal government is a big driver of our transit usage. So I would say one of the biggest things to advocate for is safe and reliable public transit, because we don't want to see a spiraling down until we see conditions level in our cities, which will happen. But in the meantime, we could lose transit service.
Great. Administrator Guzman, in terms of policies or individual practices that you'd encourage?
Well, I think across the board, continuing to drive to lowering costs for hardworking families and entrepreneurs inclusive is really important, and what's been cornerstone for what the president's driven forward on healthcare, for example, or future energy costs. And so that work continues to be important for small businesses. It matters for them, their bottom lines. Oftentimes their margins are tight. And so that's important. But in addition, the president defines America in one word, he says, possibilities. And that's really what the entrepreneur sees, is possibilities, their ideas coming to fruition. But, I really believe the investments that we've made in America are really what could transform us and make us competitive. We're competing with China that's making heavy investments in you name it, AI and beyond. And so we need to be able to continue to invest in America, ensure that we can be globally competitive across the board. And our innovative startups, our small businesses are part of that story. And so I'm excited. I know the work still continues and we have more to do, but there's been tremendous gains that has led to this historic recovery.
So we're going to, in just a minute, open it up for questions. I want to ask you, as I said at the beginning, we're not in a static state. We can't expect that the conditions today, and there are macro factors that influence directly the things that we're talking about here, including the state of the national economy. There are these questions about the evolution of technology and what AI could do for work. And so I wanted to ask you both, what in your mind are any of those factors kind of weighing especially heavily as you look out to navigate towards this vision of downtowns that we're talking about? Mayor Bowser.
Well, I think that part of our budget crunch has to do with rising costs. So the economy improving, for us to do the exact same things next year as we're doing this year, it costs a lot more across a $20 billion organization. So the national economy improving and the inflationary pressures going down would be huge for us. The same is true for supply chains. We build things in cities, libraries, schools, bridges, and all of those processes are slowed down and cost more. So that will be hugely impactful for when that cools and some of those processes can get back to normal. In terms of looking at what technology can do, my chief of staff is here. She was formerly my CTO, and we know that technology in speeding up service delivery, improving service delivery is going to be big. I think we're examining now, I'm going to get a presentation in a few weeks about AI and the government. And I think we all have to be prepared for the privacy concerns, the impact on workforce that it can have. But we think at the end of the day, there's a lot that can be improved with the way that we deliver services. A lot in tech, and I've been kind of on this soapbox for a while, has been about transportation or delivery. In some ways, dealing with services or goods that are not essential services or not for vulnerable residents. I think that there is a big opportunity in how we improve our health and human services outcomes using technology that we haven't fully explored. Yeah. Better way to deliver income assistance, better way to connect people to work and workforce training, better ways to help moms have healthy babies and a successful first year. And I'm excited about what technology can mean in that space. A small story about a friend who's a small business owner in DC giving me a tutorial on all of this AI and chat and all of the stuff that I'm not fully aware of. But I saw the power that it can have for a small business who she's an entrepreneur, been in the beauty business over 10 years. She has contract employees and one staff, but she's always trying to improve and do things differently. So she was demonstrating to a group of us that had met socially, we're having drinks, about how she used it to write letters about very complex topics to interact with the government. And so that was one person that she didn't have to hire or one evening that she didn't have to devote to doing research on something to get something very important accomplished for how she grows her business. So that was just a real quick tutorial about the impact that used properly, these tools can have for people to do more with less.
And expanding the capacity of small businesses is such big leverage.
That was just an evening that my mind was blown about what it meant for her small business.
Yeah. So just I raised the sort of question of macro factors, including the economy. What's on your radar that you're monitoring closely and thinking about?
Well, I'll take it back to our core, which is, SBA. We're that lender of last resort, and so we're really critical in the economy in terms of the money that we're able to deploy. But what an overarching principle we've had, and I know everyone is trying to lean into this, but meeting businesses where they are and everywhere that they are. As much as we can simplify and better serve our businesses with technology, with more equitable access to offerings, our economy can continue to thrive. And there's trillions of dollars that are at risk if we can't solve for the underinvestment, in particular in women and people of color in this community, in this country. And so, I think that what my focus has been at the SBA is really trying to deliver to the changing face of entrepreneurship in this country and leveraging our diversity as a strength to deploy and be globally competitive. And so across all my programs, making sure that we're considering the end user and that customer experience is first and foremost. And so I'm the Small Business Administration, making sure that we have competition in our lending environment, and that includes non-depository institutions for the first time ever. While it could be controversial, it is what we need to do to solve problems. And I think we have to be brave in government to make some changes to the way things have always been done and innovate, including with technology, so that we can make our government truly more beneficial to the small businesses it was intended to serve.
Great. Okay, we're going to take a few questions. If you raise your hand, we're walking microphones around. Maybe we start over here at that table, and then we'll come this way. Thank you. And if you could just briefly say your name and keep the questions brief if you can, so we can fit in a few of them.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. My question is for Madam Mayor. Hello, Madam Mayor. My name is Jaleesa Hall. I am a 2023 Aspen Festival Fellow, and I'm a DC nonprofiteer. And so I serve about 10% of your DC public schools. The question that I had is that there was a Georgetown study that came out that said that post-secondary education would be required for 65% of jobs by 2020. As you are aware, for children who were already falling behind, the pandemic, which began in 2020, only exacerbated the problem. With this in mind, how do you envision supporting nonprofits, who are also small businesses, as part of the DC economic ecosystem in order to ensure that those that we serve, who are the most vulnerable, can contribute to DC's competitive ecosystem?
Well, thanks for that question, and thanks for working with our kids. We're very focused on academic acceleration, and it's in every part of our government, while kids are in school, while kids are in camp, while kids are doing summer jobs, and a huge investment thanks to ARPA dollars in high-impact tutoring. Part of our strategy is really connecting our kids and changing high school. One positive thing that we learned in the pandemic was actually that some kids, the social construct of high school was more challenging than the academic part, and how we better serve them. So we're really focused on connecting those kids to services in ways that are going to allow them to be successful. And that includes learning and earning. So we have a big focus on our high demand jobs and connecting kids to those strategies now. We have a robust nonprofit sector in DC. There's a lot of outside organization of that nonprofit sector, and we do a lot of our local government work. When I talk about what the local government is doing on all these various social issues, largely through our CBO partners. And so we look forward to continuing to work with them and fund things. Now, here's one challenge that I anticipate. You heard me say already that we have to do more than less. When we see our revenues go down, then that frequently means that a lot of the support that we've given nonprofits have to go down too. And nonprofits that are, almost 100% dependent on the government are going to have to pivot too. So those are, if I said that there's one thing that we really have to work with our nonprofits on, that is how to pivot. And there has been a fiscal cliff for nonprofits from federal funds. Mm-hmm. Like we had a year, 21 to 22, where a lot of our ability to fund them went like this.
Yeah.
And those funds are gone, and now it's like this. But they don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
Because what they're doing is good work. But some of that funding will be right-sized in the coming years. So the best thing that we can do is help nonprofits get ready for that.
Let's try it over here. Yep. Thank you.
My question's about affordable housing. So you have 37,000 people working for the city, right? How do you work with private developers, if at all, to get workforce, especially workforce housing, obviously across all spectrums, but workforce housing up and running we're in California, and it is a real problem, where you don't have police and fire living 2 hours outside the city.
Sure. And I don't know that our situation is as acute as in some California cities, but it has been an issue. And before the pandemic, I regarded it as the biggest challenge for our long-term growth was affordable housing and the affordability of the region. So since 2015, we have a tool called the Housing Production Trust Fund, where I committed to doing at least $100 million a year, and we've been able to do more than that over many years. So we've invested over $1.2 billion in that tool alone, which is actually gap financing between the project's needs and our affordable housing demands. So we have produced over 35,000 new units, and we're gonna keep going on that. But we also have a pretty intricate neighborhood by neighborhood plan to get there. So we don't just have the affordable units going to one side of the city, but we have them going to all planning areas in the district, now to include a big emphasis on the downtown. Workforce, you're right to focus on, because sometimes because they're for higher income individuals, not just 30% and below, the political lift is harder, but we have to do it so that we can have our employees live in our towns.
I'm going to try and get in at least one more question. Sheila, I think you had your hand up early in white in the.
First of all, Mayor Bowser, you're exceptional. But one thing you've not given yourself credit for is all our sports teams in Washington, D.C. Yeah. And such a square footage or mileage of all the teams. I mean, we have every representation of our sports teams. Now, we just don't operate in a silo. One of the greatest things that she ever did was to build, with DC Events, our arena for our Wizards, a practice arena for our Wizards, our main arena for our Mystics. What has happened over there, which is one of the poorest wards in Washington, D.C., and every week or every other week that I come over there for the games, I cannot believe the transformation that is happening over there. I've never seen a happier group of residents. Black-owned businesses that are just building up. I go over there all the time and give speeches, but you've got to give yourself credit for what's really transpiring over there. It is just amazing. And sports is such a unifying thing that's happening in that city. I mean, whether it's politics or we're all under one roof with either the CAP Center or the Event Center. And hopefully we are really pouring back into the city some money.
No, for sure. So sport is big for all cities, and you're talking about a move to some teams going out to the suburbs. That's a big mistake in my opinion. And we're actually seeing some teams say, you know what, this drive, this nothing around us. is bad too. So we want to come back to cities. We have some pretty successful models in DC about how the city can be supportive, and the teams pay their fair share. Like, we're not a city where we can just fund, all manner of buildings.
Yeah.
But we can do some things, and it makes a difference. When a team is winning, like, there's no better thing for a town than having a championship team. 2 championships. It's just really no better thing for a
It's great to be
town.
mayor then,
It's
too.
great to be mayor. And guess what? And this is kind of a little known, well, maybe it's not little known, but a lot of these venues, as the administrator talked about, that were shuttered during the pandemic, they're having their best years ever. People are flocking back. You go in these arenas for concerts, for sporting events, they're all packed.
Yeah.
And so we have to build on that momentum.
So we're out of time. I want to give you each just a chance, maybe 2 sentences or a little bit to just wrap up. What are your final thoughts on this agenda?
Well, just that, I have great hope in the future and in our economy based on this small business boom, and it's really critical that we develop the policies around capital, develop policies around knowledge and know-how and networks to really give them the opportunity to thrive and compete against the type of global investment that's happening around the world for competition. So that's, as you talk and during Ideas Festival, just to continue to remember that the small businesses are the backbone of the economy, that they are giants, they really are critical, but oftentimes get neglected in the overall perspective. And I'm just proud that the Biden-Harris administration has leaned in so heavily to the SBA in the space of small business. So thank you for being here.
Great. Mayor Bowser, last word.
Come visit DC. We're looking forward to seeing you. Come visit us.
Great. Thank you so much, both of you. And we have some things supporting investment in small businesses, supporting mass transit in our cities, among other things. So thank you both for this great discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.